All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce my next guest. Halloween 2, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Clue, Emmy Award winner, producer of Ally McBeal, The Practice, Boston Legal, beloved as Deputy Hendricks in Jaws and Jaws 2. Welcome to the show, Jeffrey Kramer.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know how I fitted it all in one lifetime. It's stunning.
It is a lot. It's as I
I'm
kept
old
digging
now.
in, it's like you
I'm
know,
old. Please, a lady just said to me, she said, Jaws is 50 years old. My God, how old were you when you made it? I said, oh, gosh. Now I have to really be honest about my age. Okay, I was 9, I said. She started laughing. I knew.
that is the
Terrible.
problem with being in a classic like Jaws. You can't fudge your age because
But there's so many good parts. I got stopped by a cop coming through a stop sign in close to Beverly Hills, and he says, pulls me over. He says, you went through the stop sign. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't go over very far. I mean, I really didn't, and I'm sorry. He goes, why are you wearing that hat? This hat. I said, oh, I played the deputy in Jaws. He goes, love that movie. Don't do it again. So now I wear it every single day like it's going to save my life forever.
well, shit. Speaking of Jaws and 50, I think I emailed you right after I had seen it, but I went and I
Yeah,
saw
you
it in
did.
IMAX and they
Oh,
gave away these posters.
oh, really?
You were
Oh, at the
amazing on
IMAX.
IMAX.
Oh, I hope you've seen the 50th documentary. It's terrific.
I don't know if I've seen the doc.
Oh, it's
Um,
really good. Greg Nicotero and I helped, but Laurent Bouzereau did a fabulous job. And Stephen was so honest and forthright and remembered it really crazily. And it was so traumatic for him. And not everybody knew that, but it was true.
well, I can imagine because he wasn't Steven Spielberg. He
No, he
wasn't the
was,
Spielberg.
I saw him at the museum. You were still Stephen when I knew you. I get it. And many years later, I was working with David E. Kelley, and David said, "Look, I can't be there, but I won an award at the Writers Guild. Would you go pick it up for me?" I said, "Absolutely." He says, and Spielberg's presenting, so it should be fun. So in front of 600 people, Stephen said, "Oh, Jerry, I'm proud of you." And I think, oh my God, he called me Jerry. What am I going to say? No, no, my name's Jeffrey. You can't. You just save it to tell you on your podcast.
I was in a meeting once and somebody called me by my brother's name, so I just
Oh,
kind of
that's so
nodded
funny.
it
Yeah,
off, and
yeah.
then later he started asking me about me, thinking I'm my
Oh,
brother,
that's so funny.
and
It's
I couldn't.
funny.
At that point, I was too deep. I couldn't.
Yeah, for sure. Not much you can do.
No, so you played that right. Yeah, I love Jaws. It's just one of those movies that like it's so funny because like after we were seeing the 50th on the IMAX, you walk away and you're like, that movie could have been filmed yesterday. Like it's that good in every aspect of everything. It's like the fact that it's 50 years old and still holds up a thousand
Truly.
percent.
Today's standards, the shark may look a tiny bit rubbery, but it was I was stunned at the 50th memorial at the Jaws Fest on Martha's Vineyard. Everyone could remember where they saw it first, how old they were, who they were with. And I don't know many other movies, if not any, that you could ever have everyone remember all those things. And people come in with little kids, and I mean, 3 and 4 year olds are carrying them. And I said, "Oh, they haven't seen it." They go, "Oh, no, no, they've seen it." I said, "I should call social services on you. That's disgusting. They're too young. They're going to swim." Gosh,
I think
crazy.
I think people forget that Jaws is like a horror movie.
Well, and all of those movies, whether it's Halloween and horror, whatever, it seems to almost be hereditary, the love of these movies. And they really get passed down from grandparents to parents to their kids and generation to generation. It's stunning.
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah, you
I feel
can't
that
say
way.
that for
Like
TV as much.
there's certain movies I make sure my kids see. Like I always tell them also you got to see The Godfather. Like the God.
Oh yeah.
And they're like,
How
why do
old
I
are your
need to see?
kids?
I said, they're older. They're like in their 20s, in their
Oh,
20s.
oh, I get it.
Because I explain to people like if you haven't seen The Godfather, you miss references and things like Stuart Little. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody references The Godfather. But yeah, but Jaws is another one where it's just like I remember like not being able to go in pools because of that sound. You
Well, and
know,
how lucky and blessed think to be a part of something like that. It doesn't come along often. You know, we were journeymen our lives as an actor, and when I finally really grokked it that we were the last hired and the first fired, I changed my life. I mean, there was a point I was selling flowers on the corner of Fairfax and Pico with my hat down so my agent wouldn't know it was me. And I blessedly was able to change my life.
that's when you switch to
Yeah,
producing.
I went to the other side of the camera, which is very nourishing and rewarding. And, you know, I produced theater when I was in college. We started a theater in Martha's Vineyard. And in fact, when I heard in the local paper, I was an actor in New York by that time, and saw in the local paper wanted actors for movie. I had my agent call, and they arranged for me to fly to Boston and meet Steven. And it's the only time in my life I ever walked out of a meeting and I said, I'm going to get this, literally. And 10 days later, I was in Virginia, I think, shooting a commercial and got the call. But none of us knew, the rumors were going all summer that they were going to cancel it. It was never going to get finished. The shark didn't work. My part got a little bigger because they shot out all the cover that they could do. But it was just, what an experience. It was just lovely.
I can imagine. But this and Jaws was, well, at least on your IMDb. So correct me if I'm wrong. For a movie or your second credit, like Barney Miller, and then
Yeah, and
Jaws.
well, I think Barney Miller was after Jaws. I had got this when I was still in New York. Barney Miller I did when I was out here finally, eventually.
1975.
Yeah. Well, we shot it in 74, so
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Right. IMDb is different to the person looking at it than in your head because this is probably the
Yeah.
release date, not when you did it. So you're like,
And
oh, I
when
did
and when
that.
you see all the differences, just the idea of changing it is Herculean and it's just too much.
So what was it like? Because when you got onto the set, I imagine, from what I understand, there was a script. Basically, they brought in Carl Gottlieb, who I've
Right.
had on the podcast also. And I have a lot of Jaws folks. I like, and basically they're like rewrite the whole thing.
Well, my first day on set was the first day of principal photography. And it's the day where I find Chrissy's hand. And I show up and I have these little honey wagons, little dressing rooms out there by the beach that I used to swim in as a kid. And when we go to camp there, sometimes they used to tell us it was at Katama, South Beach on Martha's Vineyard, that there was a beast of Katama that sucked little boys under the sand. I was terrified as a child. But to be there and to see you have your own little honey wagon, and it was so exciting. But I was so nervous, I could have really thrown up, I think.
Well, you had that whistle, so you're
Yeah, that's for sure. And Jonathan Philly, I'd known forever, who was the college kid, and who was on the date with Susan Backliny when she jumps in the water. But it was pretty exciting. And then eventually they had a woman lie there with her hand in the sand, and they had seaweed on her and the crabs. It was scary.
it is gross. In rewatching it, when we just saw it on the big screen, there was one time where I jumped
Really?
when the shark came out. I was like,
Oh wow. I get it. But we used to know an usher when after the movie came out who'd let us in right when Ben Gardner's head pops out of the boat. And it was because you would see soda, literally, I'm not making this up, soda, popcorn going up in the air. It was stunning. The entire audience leaned back And that was because Steven said, we need one more scare in this. And they shot that insert in Verna Field's swimming pool.
That's amazing.
And Verna Fields was she was just stunning, and I loved her. And she had a great son named Rick, who I haven't seen in years, but I sure would have loved to see him again. But they called her the mother cutter because she mothered everybody. She was so lovely.
Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, Lorraine Newman, Robert Shaw, Murray Hamilton.
Lorraine
Gary. What did I say?
Lorraine Newman would have been a very different
movie.
That's so funny. Good, Jeff.
Did you spend the most time then with Roy?
Yeah. And Richard and I became great friends, and we also had our kids together. Richard both of our wives were pregnant. I'd known his wife before, and he loved my wife. Okay, they came in, and we were both having children, and Richard called me up. He says, Kramer, come on, bring some chicken from Greenblatt's and come up for dinner. So I go to Greenblatt's, which is no longer there. It's a deli in LA. And we go up for dinner. And within 24 hours, both women delivered babies. We blamed it on the Greenblatt's chicken. But it was, and I have a picture in the following year in the summer on Martha's Vineyard. We had houses next door to each other that we rented. And I have my son, Jordan, on my shoulders. He has his daughter, Emily, and they were born one day apart, and they still are in touch. And my grandmother is being driven by my mother right behind us, and we're all turning our heads looking at them. I mean, it was just it became family. It was just lovely.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So you weren't able to convince Richard Dreyfuss to come back for Jaws 2?
No, you can't. Richard has a mind of his own. He's a strong-souled, willed human being. But I've known him a long time now. I mean, generational.
That is a long time. 50 years. I'd say 50 years.
Yeah. And we met on that movie.
So in Jaws 2, was it underplayed how much Roy Scheider did not want to be there? Or did he just not want to be there?
He did not want to be there. And it was pretty obvious to many, many people. And in point of fact, I showed up to do Jaws 2, and all of a sudden my part got cut in half. John Hancock had hired a friend of his, gave him, and this guy was a very nice guy, a character actor named Marshall Efron. They gave him all the best lines. And I said, this isn't what I signed up for. And I respectfully left. And I came back and my friend said, are you crazy? You turned down a job? I said, yeah, but it's going backwards for me. I just couldn't do it. He gets fired after 3 weeks of principal photography and 6 months plus of prep. And Jeannot Swart comes in, and he and Joe Alves brought me back. They said, what happened to the guy from the original? We liked him. And they brought me back. And, my part got a little bigger, and I don't think Roy was very happy. It's, not the way he wanted things, and he would rewrite sometimes. And he was a lovely man in Jaws 1 and Jaws 2. He was forced to do it, but he was professional and he looked great. But he got so tanned, he would sit out there in a bikini and, a reflector, that they had to color correct him in the final mix. It's true.
Oh, man.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That is crazy. So in the first movie, did you know Carl Gottlieb? Was he around? Because he was.
I didn't know him that well. We have great mutual friends. A comedy writer is my dearest, oldest friend from freshman year at Ithaca College named Marty Nadler. And I'd always see him occasionally, and we became friendly.
Yeah, Carl wrote one of the classic comedies of all time, The Jerk.
The Jerk. And he did Caveman. He used Gigi Vorgan in Caveman. Yeah.
Did you ever want to go up to Carl and be like, don't you think the Brody would bring the deputy onto the orca to go hunt the Jaws?
I didn't even think about it.
Don't you think? I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking, then there would probably be a good shot you would have been eaten by the shark.
Yeah, for sure. They would have thrown me over as chum.
Is there any other?
One of the kids the two kids who have the fin in the water? He is now chief of police in Oak Bluffs, Massachusetts. Chief
Man.
Searle. Yeah.
You probably were you there the whole time or at some point?
Well, I was there for most of it during that summer. In the summers, I ran the summer theater. I produced it and played all the best young men's roles. We started it when we were in college and then took it over on our own. And we had equity actor teacher contracts and we did a play a week. So if you didn't, you rehearsed one in the day and performed the other at night. And you had to learn and act at night if you were going to ever do this. It was something else. Boy, you really learned your craft that way.
What shows do you remember any specific
Oh,
ones?
yes, we did everything from Dark of the Moon to Neil Simon to, all to the front page to a whole bunch of stuff. We did 8 shows in the summer. I mean, we were wrecks by the time. And then we went back to school or we went to New York where we lived and did what we could. In between, you were waiters. There was no Uber or anything in those days. And I got a commercial from waiting on a guy at the Magic Pan. And some of my friends from the Magic Pan who ran it, Mary and Don Fitzgerald, they're my oldest friends. We still keep in touch. Meanwhile, it was all Stofers. And we had to sign affidavits. We'd never divulge what it was made from. I told everybody, it's all Stofers, Quaker Oats.
Our kids were allergic to mac and cheese when they were younger.
Oh my gosh, that was the staple.
We didn't know what in the cheese powder.
Yeah.
So we always had to ask.
Oh, that's so funny.
And like some places you find out they were just serving Kraft.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course.
You mentioned Joe Alves. I had him on the podcast and I have his autograph right there, and fascinating person.
He's so talented. He was so talented and he never stops moving. He is such a big talent. Then he went off and did Close Encounters and he did so many Escape from New York. I mean, talk about an imagination. And he kept all of his sketches. He sells his Jaws sketches, his shark sketches now. I mean, that shark looks the way it did because Joe designed it to look like that. Bruce,
yeah, it's incredible. Actually, after I talked to him, I bought his coffee table.
Oh, the book. Yeah.
Which weighs about 1,000 pounds.
Oh, I know. It's stunning. It's a great book.
It's amazing. Yeah. Talk about, and like when you look at it and you see the storyboards that he made.
Yeah.
And then,
oh my God.
Unbelievable.
And he kept everything. He's good. He and Greg Nicotero, dear friends. And Greg is so into Jaws. He has a replica. He redid the shark that was in the museum. He has a replica of that in one of his living rooms. I couldn't get it in the entire picture. I was too close to it. It was that big.
That's amazing. He's Walking Dead too. And
he did do a shark at the museum that does the 3 things, up, down, and sideways with levers that you can control in the exhibit at the Academy Museum.
That's the Martha's Vineyard. I saw that on social. I saw some people doing it.
Oh, it's fabulous. And the Martha's Vineyard Museum had a great exhibit, but it was not nearly as big as the Academy one here. It's like a postage stamp, but it was brilliant. And we did talks there. It was so much fun. I just loved it.
You seem very close to the Martha Vineyards folks, having been there as long.
Well, my mom was born there, so we grew up there. I didn't go to school there, but I was there in the summers, and I inherited a home there, and I'm there every summer. And my kids love it and grew up, and it's just this beloved spit of land in the Atlantic that is just home.
How did the people there, the townsfolks, feel about Jaws at the time, and how do they feel about it now?
Well, at the time, I think it was mixed. Some people, the businessmen, loved it because they came and spent a lot of money. They were supposed to be gone before the height of the summer. This movie was 100 days over budget and over schedule. I mean, 100 days? That's what made Steven so crazy, because no one had ever shot anything on the open ocean before. And in those days, you have to remember, if you saw a sailboat in the back, you had to wait till it passed. And in Jaws 2, when we saw a nuclear powered aircraft carrier in the background, you just had to wait. And nowadays you can, green screen it out or whatever. It's just, crazy.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it made it such a better movie. Steven went to his best Hitchcock, and, it's so terrifying, that opening scene, and you never, ever, ever see the shark. It's magic.
It is a work of art. It is.
And I really respect talent. I worked for many years with a writer who I just adored, and his name is David E. Kelley. And we were, I produced with him and ran his company. And it was just, when you're surrounded by people who the process and the work is everything, it elevates the game for everyone around them.
My final Jaws tidbit is that your name was changed by accident to Jeff in Jaws 2.
How they let that happen, I'll never know. I wonder why he probably did it on purpose, but who knows? But I couldn't believe that it was left in there.
He just called your name Jeff.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And then how did you feel in Jaws the Revenge, which you were not in, but that they had a little photo of Roy off, but nothing for Deputy Hendricks?
No, I get it. Once a deputy, always a deputy. Although I do say, you're not chief. He took the boat anyway.
What was this in 2018's a graphic novel featuring your character?
Oh, there are. It's called Hendricks.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous. I love it. There's 4 now, I think. And, he did these, and what's his name? Stapleton. I love this kid. He's such a good man. He never used to forget a name. And he really just always believed in Hendricks. And I'm become a superhero, and I love it.
That's
and
awesome.
I have one fan who really loves me, named Judy Pankos. She wrote a song called Deputy Hendricks and sang it to me at the museum and made DVDs of it. And we actually sold them for $30 each. And she donated the money to Tourette syndrome, which is my charity of choice. We did it on all of our shows. 2 of my 3 sons and I have Tourette. And I didn't realize I had Tourette until they were diagnosed. But my middle son, Jackson Kramer, is a doctor in the UK specializing in neurological disorders for pediatrics now. He's really playing it back. He really had it terribly. And I just took 300 kids and their parents. I accompanied them to Congress. And in the halls of Congress, it was unbelievable, because the guards' heads were doing Linda Blair turnarounds, because in the hallways you hear shit, cut, fuck. And everybody's looking around. But in 10 minutes, when these kids who are so articulate now explain why they're doing it, what's happening, people understand Tourette a lot better than they ever did. And David Kelley was fabulous with us. We did it on all of our shows.
There was an Ally McBeal character.
Yeah.
Tourette's.
Peter McNichol had it.
Well, Tourette's Association of America.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put a link and people can make donations and stuff.
I would love it.
I'll put that in the show notes. Halloween 2, I just want to mention.
Yeah.
1, because it's a big deal, but you were also with Lance Guest was in that movie as well.
Right. But we didn't know each other until we all went to SharkCon the year before, and we met. Lovely guy. Nice man. Really, we had such a good time. And Mike Smith was with us. He, wrote the Jaws 2 log and stuff.
I have the Jaws log, the one that I have it signed by Carl Gottlieb on my wall. Happy Days. You were in 2 episodes of Happy Days.
Yeah.
in Laverne and Shirley as well. What was it? So early on, part of the whole Gary Marshall
Well,
phase.
I love Gary and my friend Marty Nadler. Once again, this college friend who did The Odd Couple for Gary and all of these. He brought me in, and I ended up being the leader of Fonzie's old gang, Lefty from the Falcons. It was fun. And, all those sitcoms that were all kind of over the top. And, I knew Henry before, but he's a sweet man, very nice soul. And Gary was great. So at the end, when I changed and I became a producer, Gary would call me and he goes, Jeffrey, you got something for Hector? For Hector Elizondo, he was a dear old friend, and he was in Chicago Hope for us.
That's really cool. Yeah, I like Chicago Hope. Chicago Hope's
Yeah,
biggest problem was ER, right?
yeah, exactly. Although we lasted 5 years, 6 years, whatever, but it was, yeah.
Right. If not for ER, it probably would have been 10. I mean, because it was a great show also.
Oh,
Mandy
he was so
Patinkin
smart.
and
Mandy,
yeah.
and yeah, it was lovely. Adam Arkin, who's become a big director now on TV.
It's funny how like-minded shows will just pop up. It happens with movies too a lot.
Well, imitation means greatness, but not for the imitated, not for the imitator, for the imitated. It's kind of so interesting because I actually just saw The Pit and I thought it was terrific. Really good.
Really good.
Same team that did ER, it was.
I think they're being sued. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
saw that.
All right. So you're Lefty and the leader of the game. Oh, the other kind of cool thing, which is kind of having a moment this year also, is Clue.
Oh, yeah. I love Clue. Deborah Hill was a dear friend of mine who I adored. Oh, she left us way too soon and too horribly, but she was such a lovely person. She said, "You got to come in," and I came in and read, and it's hard to read for it. They killed me immediately, and then I, laid there. But what a cast, and it was fun,
You're the
and it
Kevin
was a
Costner of
babysitter
Clue.
picture. You probably put it on for your kids when you went out because you knew they weren't going to see something that was going to scare them to death, and it was lovely. But
Yeah, it was such.
Clue really caught on. Better more after they did the gimmick of the three different endings and whatever. But and it was Jonathan Lynn's first movie, but it really was fun, and you can see the fun comes through on the celluloid. It just is. It was so fun. Tim Curry was just so good in it, and everybody, Madeline Kahn, Eileen Brennan, Leslie Ann Warren. It was just so much fun. Colleen Camp.
Christopher Lloyd, Michael McKean, Mark
Yo, and
Wall. I mean, yeah.
Chris Lloyd, I've known for a long time, and it was just lovely. I haven't seen him in decades.
I saw him at a Comic-Con a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah?
He's doing good. I mean, people just didn't, just
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm
printing
sure.
money with his autograph.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because Clue is they're doing if they haven't already, they were doing reshowings because I think it's this year's the
Yeah.
anniversary.
Yeah.
You alluded to this earlier where you kind of saw the writing on the wall that not as stable to be an actor.
I
and you
did
switched
realize
over to
we were
producing.
having babies, and I thought we're the last hired and the first fired. And if you don't really make it, you don't get the good material. You don't get this. I mean, I did pilots that I starred in, and they didn't go. So once I did this series with Jack Elam called Struck by Lightning. He was the handyman at an inn in Maine, and he'd always be struck by lightning, and he'd go, tickled my back. And I was Ted Stein, the great great grandson of Dr. Frankenstein. And I'm trying to come up with a potion that keeps him alive forever. But we're also running an inn. And you can see that it wasn't as funny as it perhaps should have been, but we shot 13. This guy, Marty Nadler, he had a show right before me called The Last Resort, because he and I were waiters in the mountains in they weren't even mountains, in Spring Valley, New York. We worked at a place called the White House on the Lake. It wasn't white and it was no lake. Truth. And we were the entertainment and the waiters. And what a crazy summer. It was just so much fun. And he and Gary David Goldberg did a series, was in that arena. And they were at 8 o'clock. We were at 8:30. So we go out the night before it airs, and I said, "Oh, Marty, I'm gonna finally make a little money. I'll be able maybe to get in a house or something and finally settle down." The next day, I drive into the Paramount lot, and the guard at the soundstage says, "Oh, Jeffrey, your friend Marty called, and he said to tell you that," and he reads it. He says, "If I were you, I wouldn't even buy lunch." The numbers were so bad that
It's too
first
bad on
day.
paper, as you described it. It sounds like it could have been like one of those quirky pushing
Well,
daisies.
yeah,
Like
but it wasn't.
it wasn't.
Yeah,
So,
as good as anybody make me, maybe you just can't make bad material good.
so wanting to be a producer, how do you? What's that pivot? Like what?
Well, I didn't work for almost 9 months after that. Like it was my fault. You are as good as your last job in many ways, and we were having a babies, and the money wasn't coming in. And what are you going to do? And I'm selling flowers on the corner, and the guy Stuart Cheslow, who went to the same college as I do, Ithaca College, that Bob Iger went to, and he said, "Listen, we're looking for an executive," because he knew I produced on the Vineyard and I was entrepreneurial. And in point of fact, there's no facts here. It's all opinions forcibly argued. And the television, and in many ways, imitation is the sincerest form of television. And I took to it like a duck to water. I had an old friend who was the bartender at the Improv, who was Leslie Moonves, and he made that transition way before I did. And he was great. And actors can do this. You can forcefully argue your point of view. And I learned to do that.
That's
Because,
awesome.
if you go into a room of suits, and sometimes they're insecure and sometimes they're attorneys, and everybody wants to have an input, and you say, "No, you don't understand, bump it a bump it a bump," that's funny. And most of them go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure."
So what was your first big producing job show?
Well, we developed something that I was so proud of called South Central. But the one that really cemented it was, I was running development. We did, Peter Roth brought in Chris Carter, and we developed the X Files. And it became the template for everything. I mean, a believer and a non believer in unexplained phenomenon, everybody's trying to recreate it if it were possible. And it was just so well done. And years ago, I ran into Gillian
Anderson.
Anderson in it was at the Bel Air bar, I think, or at the hotel or whatever. And I told her I was in the room when she got cast into her boyfriend at the time was the guy who created The Crown, Peter somebody. And she said, "Oh, Peter, he was in the room. He was in the room."
That's amazing. I love how you just kind of go, yeah, they brought in Chris Carter. We made the X Files.
Well, Chris Carter used to be the editor of Surfing Magazine. I don't know if you know this. And he'd done
No.
a bunch of pilots for Brandon Tartikoff, but this put him on the map. And he just.
Yeah, the X Files is like one of the most
Oh, big
iconic
time.
shows of all time.
I
Yeah.
didn't own it, however. In those days, you develop things, and after the pilot, you handed it off to the team of current execs who would try to keep it on the rails and whatever and do that. Now, some of these studios have people who follow it straight through and whatever, but
Oh, that's yeah. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, just
yeah.
the two of them are
And
just
I reminded her she had no quotes then. She was just out of school.
so. All right, before we get into the David E. Kelley stuff, because that's a handful. David E. Kelley, for those listening, well, he's still a big deal now, but like at the
Oh,
time,
yeah,
he was Shonda Rhimes in the late '90s and
without
2000.
a doubt. He
Yeah.
was so down.
Well,
I
by
remember
that I
we
mean
were
he had 15 shows on the air.
Well, we
Yeah.
did three, you know,
You know, but
but
I mean,
even
like,
though,
so a
but in those
million. Yeah.
days, we made 24, 26 episodes a year. I mean, now the order pattern's 8, 10. You know, it's crazy.
That's what I loved about the pit, by the way. It was 16.
I
Uh,
get it. Yeah.
all right, here's what I want to talk about. Bob Dylan 30th anniversary concert. Like how involved executive producer. I mean, that was like every
It wasn't me.
what?
It
Shit.
wasn't me, but it was Jeffrey Kramer.
Oh, different.
Dylan had a manager named Jeffrey Kramer.
All right,
And
skip it.
so I once got a call in my office. Jeffrey, it's Tommy Mottola wants to talk to you. Tommy Mottola wants to talk to me? What? I mean, what? So I take it. Hi. Hey, Jeffrey, how's Bobby? Well, we finally found out. I found out that Jeffrey Kramer was tied to Dylan, but it wasn't the same Jeffrey Kramer. There was another Jeffrey Kramer who was the mayor out in Malibu, I think, at a time. There was one who was a reporter. Yeah, there were a lot of Kramers.
Okay, but you do know it is on your IMDb.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I never look at it. I wouldn't even know.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, oh, okay. Hang on. That I have 30 questions I have to cross off. All right. Nice. Well, at least that's a funny Tommy Mottola.
Oh my
story.
God, yeah.
Okay, so back to David E. Kelley. So Ally McBeal, Practice, Boston Legal. Boston Legal, the Practice became Boston Legal. Is my memory correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was gone when it really started to surface as Boston Legal.
Got it. Got it.
I ended up producing on Broadway, and we did Sweet Smell of Success.
Oh, you know whose autograph I have in my wall right over there? Catherine Manheim.
Oh yeah, oh Cameron Manheim. Well, she
Cameron
was great.
Manheim, yeah.
And John Lithgow starred in Sweet Smell of Success. She came in to audition for the Practice and played cribbage with David. I
That's
can't
funny.
remember if she beat him or not, but she was a good girl. I haven't seen her in many, many years.
My cousin was friends with her. And
she's terrific.
all right, so Ally McBeal. Ally McBeal was like, what was your role with Ally McBeal? When you say like a co-executive producer, what does that mean in terms of Ally McBeal?
It was a way, you know, I was, you know, David went home at 6 o'clock at night. It was, you know, we were there and you end up putting out fires on all different shows. I mean, Dylan would call me sometimes, Kramer, you got to come down here. We got this, or, you know, and problems on Ally. But Callista, we found and we liked her. And I bought her. I became friendly with Todd Hames, who ran the Roundabout Theaters, because she was starring in Chekhov at the Roundabout Theater. And I had to get her out of the play. And she came in. And overnight, she became a star. I mean, she was on the cover of Time magazine. And it was stunning. You know, we'd invite all the Hollywood foreign press down to the set. And, you know, all the shows did that in those days. You could talk to the actors. And we won the Golden Globe that first year. That really put us on the map. You know, we knew we were going to be against Monday Night Football at one point. And we just said, you know, the only thing we could do, just like on the Practice, Bob Iger and Eisner shook our hand and I think lied to us and said, we're going to put you on Sunday night. And they didn't. They put us on Saturday night for the Practice. And David just said, look, we just got to make the best show we can make. And I agreed. You know, we did. And he's very talented, David. And Duchovny was very talented. I did a half hour that we tried to get made and developed it there, and where he was an Avon lady and he's making more money and having more sex than any of the women on this sitcom. And it never got made, but that's how I knew him. And he ended up the next season on The X-Files.
Right. And then that idea became Californication. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Ally McBeal was like one of those obsessive shows. I mean, it was so quirky. It was so different. I remember always having anxiety about the co-ed bathroom.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the clicker that flushed the toilet.
Yeah, but such a great cast. I remember
we get notices, we get letters. Can you tell us how you set up your co-ed bathroom? Like it really existed, you know? So it really touched that chord.
Man, I mean, we got Greg German.
Oh,
What was
yeah.
it? Richard Fit. What was it? The Waddle? Is that what it was?
Yeah, the waddle. Yeah,
Who
yeah,
came up
yeah.
with that? I mean, well,
Oh,
I get how
David,
you came up
so
with
great.
Tourette's, but like, how'd you come up with that?
David, we found the dancing baby on the internet, and David, just boom, created that dancing baby and that song, Ooga Chaka, Ooga Chaka, Ooga Chaka. It was so good.
And Barry White, like, it's just
Everybody, Al Green and Vonda Shepard. And Vonda Shepard was an artist who David and Michelle knew, and they loved her, and and she ended up being on this. She was terrific.
not only do I have the album the Vonda Shepard album, but we went and saw her in concert. I mean, during this
Yeah,
heyday of
yeah,
time, if she was at some bar in Pontiac, Michigan, and
yeah,
like so we
right.
went and saw her live and heard her sing the theme song live and all that. And it was like,
Oh, and I'm still friends with her manager, Gail Gelman. It was just fabulous. She's handles Brandy Clark now and others. Brandy Clark is a country singer. She wrote the music to Shucked, and she also has a song called "We're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat." You're gonna need a bigger boat. It's
uh,
very cool.
that's so funny. And then Lucy Liu was it
Oh,
Lucy? She's from Michigan. She used to actually work at the comedy club in Ann Arbor that I did
oh,
comedy at.
lovely
Not
soul.
sing.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen her in a long time, but and Jane Krakowski.
Love her.
Yeah, yeah, oh, fabulous girl.
Her in well, 30 Rock, and then also what was the other Tina Fey one?
Oh
Kimmy
yeah,
Schmidt.
she's been work. She worked constantly since.
Yeah, she's so funny. Courtney Thorne Smith. I mean, like Portia de Rossi, like it was
Oh
quite a cast.
yeah,
Yeah, quite a cast. And then Practice, and
the
then
practice I was very proud of. And one year at the Emmys, we won best comedy, best drama for Ally and the practice.
that
And
must have
Dylan,
been
I still am
crazy.
friend. I'm still close to Dylan and friendly with him. And
Oh, Dylan McDermott. Yeah,
Dylan McDermott.
Dylan McDermott. He's great. He's so good. He was
Well,
perfect in that role. Yeah.
David wanted Oliver Platt to do the lead in it. And he didn't want to move out. And then he said, "Man, what about Bo Bridges?" And I went to a dinner at the AFI honoring Clint Eastwood, and he was showing In the Line of Fire, and Dylan was there. He's in it. And I said, "Do you care about material?" I didn't know him. Went right up. I said, "Do you care about material?" He says, "Yeah, it's everything in the world to me." I said, "Then you owe it to yourself in your career to read this script." And he says, "All right, I promise you I'll read it." A week later, an agent calls me from CIA and says, everything you and your Mr. Kelley do doesn't stick to the ceiling, but he's a movie star. I said, "Yeah, he just did Jersey Girls. Is he going to do 49 more? New Mexico Girls, North Dakota Girls?" I said, "He gave me his word he'd read it." And he said, "All right, I'll get back to you." A week later, he called me, Dylan called me, said, "Jeffrey Kramer," he says, "I love this. I love this script." I said, "I told you, I knew you would." He said, "Did you ever hang out in a bar in the village called Jimmy Days?" I said, "Yeah, every night I'd get off the subway and I'd stop in." And he goes, "I don't think you remember me. I was an underage bus boy, but do you remember Mac?" I said, "Yeah, the bartender. He was a great guy." He goes, "That's my father." And he said, "I don't think you remember because you'd had a few cocktails, but you were so encouraging to me and you inspired me." And he goes on and tells the press this. So on my way home from the dinner, I called my kids and I said, "Whoa, you got to put it out there. You never know when it's going to come back for you.
That's
You never
amazing.
know."
It's really
Yeah,
great.
I mean, it's serendipitous in so many ways, but nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Did I see a note somewhere? Were we ever involved with the Simpsons?
Well, at the very beginning, my real involvement with the Simpsons is they'd be on the Fox lot and they had buckets of Butterfingers in there. So you could go in and just take some. But some of those guys, I did do a spin-off from The Simpsons that George Meyer was going to do. What happens to Bart Simpson live action when he graduates high school? And we have him on a golf course trying to scam Mike Ditka. I mean, it was funny. It just didn't make it on the air, but
That would have
yeah.
been different. And then so some of the other just kind of classic shows that you were on, Soap.
Soap, that was fun.
Couple episodes of MASH.
MASH, yeah, MASH was great. I did a couple. I played different characters. It went on for so long, and it became later in life very friendly with Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabre, and what a lovely, wonderful people, good humans.
All good people. So, all right. So,
I have been blessed, my dear Jeff.
yeah, I mean, your
Life,
career is amazing.
well, it always seemed like it wasn't enough, you were always looking for what's next and trying to feed your kids and do this and it was I didn't change my life till I was 39 years old. So thank you. I mean, one of the things I used to know George Clooney in the old days when he was doing ER and we were doing the practice and we was beginning Ally McBeal, and he was always grateful. And I am too. I just know it's one of the keys, I think, to aging gracefully and being appreciative and is gratitude. I mean, we're all lucky and to be here and to go from job to job. And even though sometimes it took months job to job, but it's life is about more than that. I'm grateful for so much in life. It's just, I think we should all stop and think. We need to think this way to some degree.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah,
that would be a great way to frame things.
for sure.
I appreciate you hanging out with me and sharing all these
Oh, I
amazing
enjoyed it.
stories.
We covered a lot of territory, and I remember what I learned in kindergarten. By the inch, life is a cinch. By the yard, exceedingly hard. True.
Very wise words. It's amazing what
Thanks.
sticks with you and stays with you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Deputy.
You bet. Thank you.